Well, maybe they'll get rid of some of the fire ants. I hope so.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But keep in mind, it's supposed to be 70 on Sunday, so.
Yeah. Well,
that's Arkansas weather.
That's exactly right. I was about to say that's what they say about Arkansas weather. So tell our listeners. So we've got listeners in both corners of the state, and as well as Little Rock, Stuttgart, Russellville. Just tell us real quick again. District 6 geographically, where are we talking about?
District 6 includes Johnson County, Logan County, Franklin County, and Yale County.
All right. It's a pretty big district.
4 counties in west central Arkansas.
Okay. All right. So, Senator Stubblefield, we're coming up on this special session this year. And, of course, last week we had those budget hearings, and we had the news that, I guess it'll be the 4th year in a row. We've increased spending. Going to be increasing spending, according to what the governor's proposing, $172 million. Obviously, a big deal of that is a big chunk of that increase is going into the DHS budget. What are your thoughts on, where what do limited government conservatives do when we see the government continue to grow?
Well, first of all, Paul, most of these new dollars, most people know, go to public schools and human services. Those are two of the big 6 that we talked about during last week. These are called pre-budget hearings. I don't put a lot of emphasis on them because the real meat will come whenever we start with the budget hearings on February the 12th. That's where legislators really need to get down to the specifics and ask questions. And by the way, I would like to apologize to the constituents in my district and to the citizens of the state of Arkansas, because I've been here 7 years, and I've sat through those budget hearings and watched as they transpired. No one really asked any real specific questions, and they were voted out. I'm hoping this year's going to be different, because we're going to ask some very down-to-earth specific questions about how our tax dollars are being spent, and any of that revenue that's left over needs to come back to the general fund. So I'm hoping this year will be different, because I just hope and pray that some legislators will step up to the plate and ask some tough questions about how our tax dollars are being spent.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the pre-budget hearing, we listened to, like I said, the big 6. You've got public school fund, Department of Human Services, Department of Health, Department of Corrections, Department of Community Corrections, and there's one more, higher ed. And whenever I sit in on these hearings, it reminds me a lot of the code talkers back in World War II, the Navajo code talkers. I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah.
Because you hear these explanations of why these agencies need all this surplus funds, and it's a whole litany of speculations and assumption, and they use their different methodologies and why they need it and how they need it. Well, that's not going to work on February the 12th. They're going to have to come up with a whole lot better ideas. And let me give you an illustration. Last Monday, I chair state agencies now since Eddie Joe Williams left. We had the Arkansas Department of Corrections come before us, and I don't know if your listeners are aware of how the farm operation is run at the Arkansas Department of Corrections. But here's an agency that the farm operations, we loan them somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.2, $5.4 million every year to plant a crop. Now the farm operation has like 16,000 acres. They've got 2,000 head of beef cattle. They've got 1,300 head of a swine operation, a large poultry operation, hundreds of tractors, hundreds and hundreds of other pieces of equipment, high-dollar equipment.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can be a part of that is to let us know how we're doing. You can text us, call us, 870-275-9799. I got a few things. Not yesterday, but the day before. So what was today? Thursday. So that'd be on Tuesday night, Tuesday evening. Governor Asa Hutchinson spoke at the Washington County Republican Committee meeting. Now, why this is interesting is, number one, the content of what he had to say, and I have a little bit of a rundown of that for you. But then you got to remember, so Jan Morgan, his opponent, to the governor's dismay, has been going around to all of these Republican committees, and she's been getting great results because, she's really just bringing, specific, fundamental, limited government conservative ideas and criticizing the experience she had last year at the Marble Palace when it came to the political games and everything else concerning the Second Amendment, as well as other things. And this has not gone over well with Governor Asa Hutchinson, so he's following her around in some cases. You also have, and I'm going to go over it here in just a minute, but I do want to remind you that you have to understand that before Christmas, okay, the governor's office was caught because there was an employee of the governor, Doug Smith, that was caught sending emails to the Mississippi County Republican Committee, essentially trying to bully the Mississippi County Republicans so that they would uninvite, and we've got the email to prove it. I mean, because somebody in the Mississippi County Republican Party knew who to go, knew where to turn with the emails, and they emailed me, and they gave me the email from the governor's employees saying, hey, we don't think, essentially Jan Morgan is, if you're going to criticize the governor, Jan Morgan doesn't need to come, and then even copied the owner of the venue on the email as well, which was just a veiled, threat of intimidation, saying, hey, maybe this guy doesn't want you guys to have your little event. It was a Lincoln Reagan Day dinner. So anyway, this was, in the wake of Jan Morgan being uninvited from the Craighead County event. She was invited, then uninvited, and there was a lot of talk that there was pressure about that. And as a matter of fact, there was pressure put on Republicans. See, what's interesting, that actually has sparked. The same thing happened in Baxter County, but she wasn't uninvited. She did, in fact, speak. That actually, all this has done is spark your local grassroots Republicans to say, hang on, wait a second. Why do you want so much? I guess, in a way, it's worship. In a way, it's we want your fealty. We want we want you to pledge complete loyalty to whoever is in power right now, and right now that's Asa Hutchinson. And so when Asa is following Jan Morgan and going where she is gone, you certainly know that he's worried about what people are saying about him and his record of being, at the very least, an extreme moderate. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and what he said at the Washington County Republican Committee 2 days ago. But first, let's get to some national news, shall we? President Donald Trump announcing his 2017 Fake News Awards. And the media, oh man, they are just spinning. They can't believe that he would do this. I remember back in 2012 when Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were, in what people hoped was going to be a competitive race. It really wasn't, obviously. But there was a former Democratic pollster, a guy by the name of Pat Caddell. You guys remember Pat Caddell? He said something that has always stuck with me. Again, a former Democrat pollster for Jimmy Carter. The media was so biased back in 2012 at the re-election of Barack Obama. He went on Fox News and he said that the media in America today is now the enemy of the American people. And I remember thinking, wow, that is strong language. But I couldn't disagree with him. I mean, it's you know, and the reason I say that is because you've got, you know, Jeff Flake, who's not going to run again, Senator Flake out of Arizona, and he's going around and he's saying that you know, the president, you know, using such strong, he's comparing the president to Joseph Stalin by criticizing the media. Folks, there is, I mean, it's. There's no doubt that there is a media that leaves the truth on the cutting room floor. They are obsessed with trying to control how we think, not just telling us what happened and allowing us to make up our minds. That's what news is now. As a matter of fact, you can make a strong case that a program like this actually respects you more because I'm honest enough to tell you that I'm a limited government conservative that believes in the Constitution and the rule of law. And you guys know my perspective versus the mainstream media that attempts to cloak itself in objectivity, but is really trying to control how we think, okay? Just like Washington is trying to control and social engineer us, or they have been for so long. These fake news awards are genius, and I'm glad that the media is freaking out about it. But, I mean, if you go down and look at this list, I remember every one of these from last year. Number one, okay, let's go through them real quick. Number one, the New York Times' Paul Krugman claimed on the day of President Trump's historic landslide victory that the economy would never recover. That was fake news. Number two, ABC News' Brian Ross chokes and sends the markets in a downward spiral with a false report. And they have this headline here: ABC demotes Brian Ross after bungled report on Trump-Russia. Remember that? And then they've got a screenshot here of the market tumbling 350 points. Number three, CNN falsely reported that candidate Donald Trump and his son Donald J. Trump Jr. had access to hacked documents from WikiLeaks, meaning they had them earlier than everybody else. And here is this Fox News headline: CNN botches dates, inaccurately reports Trump campaign had WikiLeaks sneak peek. Number four, the Times falsely reported that President Trump removed a bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. Number five, Washington Post falsely reported that President's massive sold-out rally in Pensacola, Florida was empty. There was a dishonest reporter that showed a picture of an empty arena hours before the crowd started pouring in. Number six, CNN falsely edited a video to make it appear President Trump defiantly overfed fish during a visit with the Japanese Prime Minister. The Japanese Prime Minister actually led the way with the feeding. For those of you that can't see this over at facebook.com/Conduit News, this was a video where they made Trump look like a moron by just editing it, by not showing the Japanese Prime Minister dumping his entire box of fish food in the pond, which he did that first. It just shows Trump dumping his entire, and it looks people in America like, that was odd. Well, you know, it was customary, right? There's a reason in Star Trek: The Next Generation that Jean-Luc Picard a lot of times has to dress up, you know, in weird garb when he's meeting a new alien race. I'm just saying, it's diplomacy, folks. It's diplomacy. You adapt to the customs. All right, number seven, CNN falsely reported about Anthony Scaramucci's meeting with a Russian, but retracted it due to a significant breakdown in process. And that's this headline. There were as a result of that, number seven, 3 CNN employees resign over retracted story on Russia ties. Number 8, Newsweek falsely reported that Polish First Lady Agata Kornhauser did not shake President Trump's hand. Number 9, CNN falsely reported that former FBI Director James Comey would dispute President Trump's claim that he was told he was not under investigation. He was told he wasn't under investigation. And number 10, the New York Times falsely claimed on the front page that President Trump's administration had hidden a climate report. I remember this one, and it was strange. And the New York Times, you have the Washington Post writing about the New York Times screw-up. Headline, New York Times guilty of large screw-up on climate change story. So there you go. That's your top 10. Okay, and this is driving the media crazy. But, I mean, if you look at it, folks, I mean, what are we going to say? Why would the media get it so wrong so many times last year? And if you really look into it, it's because they're just so focused on not accepting the will of the American people. They want flyover country, they want us to wish we'd have voted for Hillary Clinton. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. See, when they gave all that coverage, I said this on Monday, when they gave all that coverage to the president's comments about Haiti or whatever he allegedly said or didn't say or whatever, they're wanting you to think, oh, man, he is so bad, we should have voted for Hillary. And it's like, but they don't understand. I mean, people were very much aware of who they were voting for. They understood they were voting for the lesser of two evils. And right now, President Trump's first year, I mean, if you actually look at what's happened with the tax cuts and with, Jerusalem being declared the capital, just something that presidents have always promised to do but never done. And you look at what's going on and look at how the media is more exposed than ever. The media is less trusted than ever. Look at how we now know that there are these lifelong government employees called the deep state, and they are trying to nullify the election. But Donald Trump. Back to the S-hole comment. Okay. Donald Trump, everybody knew he wasn't running as the moral standard. He wasn't saying that I'm the moral standard of what you need to know. Of course, he didn't run like it. That's not how. And so they try to point this stuff out, and now they're just so appalled, and it's just I don't know. People, I think, can see right through it, and then you get to the specifics of what they're telling you and lying, how they're lying to you. They're just so obsessed with bringing you lies. And it's because many of the journalists working there cannot believe at what happened. They can't believe. They don't want to accept that they were that disconnected. They all thought Hillary was going to win. They don't want to accept that the rest of the country that they report on, okay, is completely different from the people on the coasts. And which is why California, Joe, you were saying California is now trying to secede. It's from itself. They want to divide into two states, or there's a movement because they're saying, aside from all of the area on the coastline of the the Pacific, the vast as far as a land ratio goes, are Republicans. But it's it's the 9 million people that live in. Is it 9 million people that live in the Orange County or whatever? It's just all these population centers, and so they're trying to say, hey, and that's the kind of the same thing with the flyover country. There's just a lot of resentment. Yeah, 10.17 million people in Los Angeles County. Okay, all right. So hang on, we're going to regroup here. We're going to take a break. Went a little long here. When I come back, I'm going to summarize for you what Governor Asa Hutchinson said at the Washington County Republican Committee meeting 2 nights ago. We had somebody kind of foreshadow that for us yesterday on Facebook. We had somebody who was there, Patrick, who said that the governor essentially said that spending is always going to grow, and you've got to find a way to just, limit how much it grows, but it's always going to grow. And I thought to myself, that's just, we'll talk about it more when we come back, because he said much more than that. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works Obamacare private option, has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on the program, we're going to be talking with Dr. Howard Fuller, who is the founder/director of the Institute for Transformation of Learning at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He's actually going to be in Little Rock next week. It is National or Statewide School Choice Week. Dr. Fuller and Dr. Patrick Wolf, they're going to be at the Mosaic Church in Little Rock. They're going to speak. It's a live debate and discussion of school choice beginning at 6 o'clock Monday, January 22nd at Mosaic Church. So if you want to check that out, anybody in the Little Rock area or across the state want to make their way to Little Rock for this, it's going to be good. We're going to be talking to him coming up at 6:33. All right, so what did the governor say? And I'm summarizing here. What did he say at the Washington County Republican Committee? Now, granted, he's following Jan Morgan. Where Jan Morgan goes, he goes. He tries to, clean up the damage, if you will. So, number one, This is the number one thing. He said he basically advocated that more spending over the last successive year is gonna continue as needs increase with time. All new administrations, he contended, spend more than previous ones. Now, here's the problem, because a lot of people are going to agree with that, and if you kind of dive into the numbers, technically that's in terms of inflation and things like that. Yeah, okay, your budget's going to increase, but do we really think that Arkansas's budget? Do you really think the $600+ million Asa is increasing spending in the 4 years he's been here? Are we really going to argue that is inflation caused? $600 million? I don't think so. If you look at a state like Texas, because that's what the establishment progressives are going to say. Okay, well, Texas, you've got to look at what Texas does. See, there's a way for your budget to increase compared to what we're increasing it in a minute way if you have a formula. And you've looked at is it Colorado that has the taxpayer expenditure limit, which is a policy? I think so. That essentially there's a formula where you say, okay, inflation plus population growth. And so over time, if you're saying we're going to tie inflation plus population growth, that's as much as the budget can grow. Over time, it's actually stagnant growth. It's not actually growing over time. It is stagnant growth because you have the economy. Keep in mind, if the economy grows, and the government stays the same size, in a way, government has actually decreased in size, right? So, but I found it interesting that Asa, in front of the Washington County Republicans, essentially saying, look, we're going to keep spending your money, and it's just going to happen. I'm like, wow, you're kind of rewriting conservatism. You're rewriting what people's policies have been in this country for decades and decades and decades about getting spending under control. At the beginning of every hour, we have a clip of Ronald Reagan saying they seem to be backing away from spending cuts. That's right, spending cuts, meaning you spend less than you did last year. Come on. But you know what he's doing? Do you know what Asa's doing? He's directly addressing the criticisms he hears on this program because he listens to it. Now, you know what and here's another thing. You know what else? He directly addressed a Jan Morgan criticism. At the Washington County Tea Party, he was adamant that he not Tea Party, Republican Committee, he was adamant that he did not refuse to sign a Sharia law ban. It was international law, he made sure to correct, but it became law without his signature. So this is a direct direct response to Jan Morgan. On Jan Morgan's Facebook page and her massive social media reach, she has been saying that Asa refused to sign the Sharia law bill, the anti-Sharia law bill. Now, this was a bill that did become law, American law in American courts. It just says, hey, you're not going to use outside law in our courts. It enhanced or restated the Bill of Rights. It was really good. Shouldn't be a controversial thing. Now, there were tons of I would say activists that showed up and were against this bill. It passed anyway, but there were people from the Muslim community that spoke out against it. And Asa didn't want to sign it. Asa did shy away from it. He didn't think it was necessary, even though you have states all over the country that have already passed this law. Arkansas tried to pass this law many times, has failed. You'd think with a Republican governor we'd do it, but he didn't want to do it. He was afraid of a Islamic backlash. He was afraid of a liberal progressive backlash. That's why Asa didn't support the anti-Sharia law bill. And that's why he didn't sign it. And yet he's saying, I didn't refuse to sign it. It just became law without my signature. It's the same thing. Why are you trying to make that distinction? Why didn't he sign the anti-Sharia law bill? Well, because he didn't support it. We will be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
And free labor, by the way. Don't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And we give them $5.2 million every year that's never repaid. It's never been repaid. Now, if you gave the average farmer out here who knows a little bit about farming, those kind of assets, and they could not make it. They could not make a profit with free labor and all those things being paid for by the taxpayers. They wouldn't be in business.
Mm-hmm.
They would not be in business.
Right.
And yet we're doing that with the Arkansas Department. Those are the kind of inefficiencies that we need to look at, because I don't think the Arkansas taxpayers are going to continue to want to subsidize these kind of operations.
No, we don't. We certainly don't. We're talking with Senator Gary Stubblefield. Do you think it'll go beyond tough questions? I mean, is there the political will, for example, in the higher chamber, the Senate? Is there the political will to say, you know what, the executive branch thinks we need to spend X, but we think we need to spend Y, and Y is less than X? Do you think there's the political will to do that?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I do know that all these states, these 31 states that expanded Medicaid, they're in real trouble. And they're having to come up with funds, and the only way they can come up with funds is to take it from places, and those people who are on these waiting lists, I think the number somewhere across the nation is 650,000 disabled people, eligible people that are on the waiting list for Medicaid that can't get on it because we've got 12 million able-bodied people on this program. Mm-hmm. And I was reading the other day, of course I already knew this, that 25% of the people that's on this, they're supposed to be making a $13 a month payment on their premiums. Well, only 25% pay that. And more than three-fourths of the people on Arkansas Works show zero income last year. Mm-hmm. Zero income.
Yeah, and if you don't pay that $13 a month, nothing happens. You still get to keep your plan.
No, you get to keep your plan. In fact, the only way they can get it back is through the lottery, which makes no sense at all to me. But the fact of the matter is, we cannot. There's no way this is sustainable. It just won't work.
Yeah.
And if these other states, these non-expansion states, should they decide to expand, then we've got a real problem.
Yeah,
we've got a real problem.
Yeah, no doubt. It's really, really bad. And I'm glad that you mentioned Medicaid expansion. And you mentioned corrections as well.
bestfriends.org.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Howard Fuller, his career includes many years in both public service positions and the field of education. Dr. Fuller is a distinguished professor of education. He's founder director of the Institute for Transformation of Learning at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I just would like to welcome him to the program. Dr. Fuller, thanks so much for coming on with us, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to have you on. Next week is School Choice Week. And I understand you're going to be in Arkansas. I've got a press release here that Dr. Howard Fuller, Dr. Patrick Wolf, leaders in school choice advocacy and research, will speak at a live debate and discussion of school choice beginning at 6 p.m. Monday. It's in Little Rock, January 22nd at Mosaic Church. What can you tell us about that, sir?
Well, it's a meeting where we hope to deal with the questions and issues that people and concerns that people have about addressing parent choice. Patrick is a well-known and probably one of the best researchers out there on this issue. And so I'm really looking forward to being in Arkansas to talk about this important issue to parents and children who are trying to find the best option for their education.
And that's really what this is about. And, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, school choice to me just means, hey, we can't have this one size fits all where we kind of protect the institution that education has become. It has to be about the children, and I think more ideas and more experimentation in the realm of education is better than just let's just keep sticking with what we're doing and throw more money at it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that may be one part of it, but I want to be really clear. I actually don't like the term school choice. I actually prefer parent choice, because the reason why I got into this battle over 20-some years ago was try to make sure that low-income and working-class parents have some of the options that those of us with money have. And so I'm in this battle because I don't think we should have in America where only people with money have the ability to make some decisions about where is the best place for their children. And since we don't have a situation where we have cookie-cutter children, we have children who have different needs, different interests, and I believe that we ought to have more than one option for parents to try to find the best place for their children. And again, I do believe that parent choice is widespread in America if you have money. And so I don't think this is an issue about whether or not we should have it. It's an issue of who should be able to take the opportunity to have choice.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit, because obviously politics comes into play here. There are many, if we're looking kind of at a right-left spectrum, there are many on the left that advocate, the government does X, Y, and Z to help people who are, on the lower rungs of the socioeconomic ladder. So why, and correct me if I'm wrong, but why does it seem like the left is maybe a little allergic to the concept of parental choice, as you put it?
Well, I think that it's interesting because I was there in the beginning when the first voucher bill was passed in Wisconsin. And it's really interesting because it was passed through a Democratic legislature and signed by a Republican governor. In the beginning, this was a bipartisan effort. But over time, it has evolved into an effort where many people who see themselves as Democrats, or what you call on the left, oppose parent choice because they believe that it is an assault on public education. And I think the reason why people think this is that they have an erroneous understanding about the difference between public education and the system that delivers it. And what I am for is public education. But what I'm also for is a different delivery system that allows us to educate the public. And so I think we have to be clear on the distinction between those two things. And so you have people who are, quote, protecting a system, but they're trying to make the moral argument that they're protecting public education, when in reality, they're not protecting public education. They're protecting a particular system that is supposed to deliver public education.
That's a really important distinction, and so I was down. I was in Little Rock last year. It was the General Assembly session, and of course, in Arkansas we have these massive Republican majorities. We have a supermajority in the House. We have almost a supermajority in the Senate, and we have a Republican governor. And so there was a very, very modest, I know you don't like the term, but school choice bill, and we couldn't get it passed. And the reason it didn't get passed is because we had Republicans, and it's a key plank in the Republican Party platform, but we had people that were hearing from their superintendents. In some cases, the superintendents across the state were directly lying about the bill. I've talked to some state reps who said that they even got the superintendents to admit that they didn't really even understand what was going on, and they were just, like you said, basically you're confirming exactly what I experienced. They're just protecting the system, but they're claiming the moral high ground.
Yeah, I think, and we'll use school choice. I mean, I lost that argument a long time ago.
Okay.
But I think what people have to understand is that an education system, and I was a superintendent, an education system is not just an education system, it is an economic system. And in a lot of the rural areas, for example, in places like Arkansas, even in Wisconsin where I live, and other places, a school district is the main employer in some of those communities. And so when you begin to talk about giving parents options to choose and to take those resources elsewhere, you're not only talking about education, you're beginning to impact people's economic reality. And so we have to be real when we get into these debates and not talk about stuff that's sounds good at one level, but doesn't deal with reality. And so the fact of the matter is, in many places where you have, quote, Republican majorities, you can't get parent choice passed because rural areas in particular, Republicans, will oppose it. So we shouldn't think that this is simply a left-right issue. It actually has both bipartisan support in some places and bipartisan opposition in others.
So, how do we do you believe that decentralization is key when it comes to some of the issues that affect us or that we're facing when it comes to education? You know, maybe more of a localist approach versus like a top down. See, because I guess we're talking with Dr. Howard Fuller. Sometimes I think that if the bureaucrats had their way, they would replace our teachers with robots just so they could predict and monitor everything that that they teach specifically, and then look at the results and try to tweak it later. I mean, what do you think about the top-down approach versus the local government approach?
You know what? I think it depends. It depends on who the people are. It depends upon what the objectives are.
Yeah.
I don't. The one thing I've learned about America and over all of these years, and I do love this country, it's a very interesting country, is that when we begin to talk about this one thing is the way to do it as opposed to this one thing, it's almost never come to pass. So I look at it and say, in certain situations, you want to make sure that the people at the base, the people who are being impacted, that they have a lot to say about what happens. But in other instances, you want that also to be working in concert with people who may be running a particular bureaucracy and so forth. So having been a superintendent, I always believed that the only way I could really make change was to have people power at the base. You know what I mean? Because when you're the head of a bureaucracy, if you care about what's really happening to the people that you're serving, you want those people to have as much power as possible to even push against you. Because I needed people to be empowered, because if you don't have power in the base, you're usually strangled by the middle. And so that if you're on top of something and you really want change to occur, you want to make sure that the people who are being affected have the most power, even if they're going to come out in opposition to you. Because that's just how I see things. I don't think we should depend on bureaucracy to serve the people, but we need the help of bureaucracies to serve the people. The question is, how do you empower the people so that they can make sure that they're being served well?
Yeah, that's really, really good. Those are really, really noble goals. So, again, folks, we're talking with Dr. Howard Fuller. I mean, he has an extensive career in this education field. He definitely knows what he's talking about. So, last question, and I know this is just a general question, but parent choice. Okay, what do you think the one thing that we could do legally or legislatively that would get us the best results and give parents more choice?
I think, there are a variety of ways of doing it, because parent choice is a broad umbrella. And under that umbrella, you can have a variety of different policies. So, for example, in Milwaukee, we have a voucher program that allows people who are, I think it's 300% of poverty, to access private schools. You also have like a thing called open enrollment, where people can access any school district in the state. Within the school district, you also have the ability of people to choose different types of schools for their children. So what I think we have to do, Paul, is not see parent choice as one particular, you got to do it this one particular way. The question is, in a given community, what would be the best way to make sure that parents have a variety of options? Let's say you're in a rural area where you only have 200 kids in a school district or something. There are these very, very small school districts. So the question would be, in a school district like that, what would be the best way to make sure that parents had an option, and you also were going to have the resources that you could provide the best education for the children? What it could mean is a radically new design for the existing district, so that the choices that people are talking about may primarily take place within the context of that district. fight for parent choice can't only have one way of even trying to approach parent choice. So that we can't be like the thing that we're fighting, where we keep saying, well, there's only one way to do this. No, there's got to be a variety of different ways to do it to empower parents. We just have to open up our minds to be creative to make that happen.
Yeah, that's really, really good stuff, Dr. Howard Fuller. I appreciate you coming on, and I definitely know the parents across Arkansas, I think what you're saying definitely resonates with them, because parents want more choices when it comes to their kids' education. And I just want to say welcome to Arkansas, even though you're not here yet, but you're gonna be in Arkansas Monday, January the 22nd at Mosaic Church, 6 p.m. in Little Rock. Dr. Howard Fuller and Dr. Patrick Wolf, you guys are going to be having a debate. About 200 people are expected to attend. Folks, show up. You just heard him here. Dr. Fuller, I appreciate you coming on the program. It's been my pleasure, sir.
Thanks for having me.
All righty, folks. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Attention, men. If you have tried or wanted to
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you. My name is Paul Harrell. This is Conduit News Radio, and our phone number 870-275-9799. We're also broadcasting over at facebook.com/Conduit News. And our YouTube, we have a YouTube page as well that goes up. We want to do this, and we're on live stream as well. We just want to make it as easy on you as possible, broadcasting on 3 different video mediums as well as terrestrial radio stations across Arkansas. Sorry, thank you, Joe. Also, we have an audio only podcast, iTunes or SoundCloud. Feel free to check that out. All right. I guess we were going over Governor Asa Hutchinson's talking points. at the Washington County Republican Committee meeting 2 nights ago. And he is actually directly addressing the criticisms that he's getting from the right, which is new. And he wouldn't be unless he had a primary opponent in Jan Morgan. Jan Morgan was at the Washington County Republican Committee late last year, and Asa followed her there and trying to, mitigate the damage. He's doing the same thing. He's following her. Wherever she goes, he goes. So here's what some of the stuff he said. We already mentioned the fact that he said, hey, look, there's nothing we can do about increasing spending. It's going to happen. It's just the question is how much is it going to happen? Well, folks, I reject that, okay? Over $600 million in spending increases since he's been governor. There's nothing conservative about that. That's not a stagnant growth. You can have growth, as we mentioned earlier, if you tie it to, inflation plus population growth to where your economy's growing. And so you basically have stagnant growth. It's not real growth. I mean, it goes up, dollars go up because of inflation, but it doesn't go up $600 million in 4 years. Okay, it doesn't. And so he's increased spending 133, 140, 160, now 172. It doesn't go up that much if you're just tying it to inflation and population growth. It doesn't. Okay, so he is clearly deficient when it comes to the base and his spending habits, right? He has not taken Arkansas in a fiscally responsible direction. And the main reason that is he couldn't say no to the special interest and the lobbyists that control this state when it comes to Medicaid expansion. He didn't want to end it and lead us out of it. He says that income tax cuts are coming. He said this. Also, more revenue for state is expected. He said that Medicaid expansion will reduce and that they will have real work requirements, okay? Essentially exposing, he used to say that we had work requirements when he first came out with Arkansas Works. When he first came up with Arkansas Works, that was supposed to be work requirements, and they talked about work requirements, and it was this program and other mediums that had to expose the fact that, they were work referral requirements, meaning they get a sheet of paper and they're told, hey, you can go here for work training or possibly to apply for a job, and if you don't, nothing happens. It was carefully crafted language to the finest to make people think that what he was doing was conservative, when in fact it had no teeth in it at all. But we're told now it'll have teeth. It'll be interesting to see how many people actually get kicked off because they fail to work. Let's see, what else did he say? He's standing on that $100 million tax cut since, so he's still promoting. I know, we got to get to that. We've got time. So $100 million tax cut, he's certainly talking about that, saying, hey, I did cut your taxes. I did what I said. You increased spending $600 million, and you cut taxes by $100 million. Did government grow or did government shrink? He insists, Governor Asa Hutchinson insists that the military tax cut was, in fact, a tax cut. They are standing by this. They're just going to claim it a tax cut. Folks, the Bureau of Legislative Research, their own documents show that it wasn't a tax cut. They gave military this retirement carve-out, which is arguably, we could argue whether that was right to do or not, but Governor didn't want to eat the $13 million cost. So they raised taxes on candy and soda. They raised taxes, created a new tax on digital downloads, and they said it was going to be a wash. They said it was going to balance out. Well, we now know that's not true. The Bureau of Legislative Research own documents say that the government of Arkansas, because of that revenue-neutral tax cut for military veterans, actually netted the state an increase of $8 million, and I think it'll be a little more than that next year or something. I don't have that document right in front of me. My point is, folks, it was a tax increase. If they take more money from us than they were getting before, that is a tax increase on the people. And by the way, retired military veterans buy candy and soda as well. So, and by the way, what is the average you're going to save income, getting an income tax exemption if you're a retired military, $400 a year. And we want to act like that's some, oh, wow, come to Arkansas. We don't tax your retirement military benefits. You'll save $400 a year, or you could move to Florida and not pay any state income tax at all. You could move to Florida, which is got a great climate, and you still don't have to pay, there's no income tax at all there for everybody. Wouldn't it be great if we treated everybody the same and didn't have carve-outs? I mean, look, I know it's our military veterans, and if you're going to have a carve-out for anybody, okay, all right, I got it. But why couldn't we just absorb that $13 million? Why do we have to raise taxes on candy and soda? You know, they initially tried to eliminate the exemption for mobile home manufacturers, and, of course, that lobby got very active and got that killed very quickly. Let's see. We talked about this one. Governor Hutchinson, in his talking points, did not refuse to sign Sharia law ban. He says it was international law ban. He wants to make sure it was not a Sharia law ban. It was an international law ban. We don't want an Islamic backlash here. Now, yeah, the bill did say international law, but it was directed at Sharia law because there are instances of this attempted to be used by judges across the country. When they are adjudicating cases and that sort of thing. But the fact is, he's sensitive to this. He knows it hurts him because Jan Morgan's on Facebook telling people that this is a problem, right? And see, what else do we have? Important tax increases. So Governor Hutchinson is endorsing sending tax increase proposals to the people, letting them decide, but he is in favor of that. Which means he is in favor of the tax increase. Because if you weren't in favor of increasing taxes, you would use every power that you had to make sure that's not a possibility. But so he does want to send, and by the way, the proposal he supported by State Representative Dan Douglas actually had a deceptive ballot title, and it would have increased our taxes, but it said nowhere in the ballot title that it was going to increase our taxes. So square that with me. Okay? So, folks, why are we in this situation? Why do we have such a middle-of-the-road governor? Anybody know why? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because his influence on the legislature is this. We can't, and John Brummett said it last week in an editorial, we can't govern too conservatively because bad things are happening. Matter of fact, his nephew went down to the in the basement of the Marble Palace, in the basement, in front of a room full of conservatives. And in 2015, we were wanting to get rid of Medicaid expansion as conservatives. We had massive Republican majorities. And Senator Jim Hendren, the governor's #1 nephew, said this.
You know, when we were in the minority party for a long time, it really didn't matter what we filed that did any significant change because it wasn't going to pass. It's a different situation down here today, and we have the opportunity to make real change and to pass legislation and do things. We also have an opportunity to screw it completely up and get the blame for it.
Well, this is me blaming you.
Here's what the bill says. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just going to tell you each one of these cases that I put up there is where it says it ends Medicaid expansion. It ends it.
Hey,
and there's a lot of people say, well, it would have ended anyway.
Yeah.
It would. The private option would have ended. Medicaid expansion would not.
Hey, give me a call.
All we would have done is gone from private insurance policies back to Medicaid expansion.
Yeah.
It was the law that directed them to change the state plan to expand Medicaid. And unless that law was changed,
if Medicaid expansion has ended and I don't know about it, somebody call me.
Medicaid expansion would be continuing with or without the private option at December 31, 2016.
Your bill did not end it,
That's
sir.
That's the cold hard fact.
No, it's
that's
not.
Not what people like to say.
Well, yeah.
And that's what the bill says.
You said that it was going to end Medicaid
expansion. And I will give you, in defense of people who freak out, I can see why there's some confusion based on some of the headlines.
Yeah, so let me know.
When we were in the minority party for a long time, it really didn't matter what we filed that did any significant change because it wasn't going to pass. It's a different situation down here today, and we have the opportunity to make real change and to pass legislation and do things. We also have an opportunity to screw it completely up and get the blame.
Yeah, that's Senator Jim Hendren. He's the mouthpiece of Governor Asa Hutchinson, and that was in 2015, and that's why we have the results that we do. We have the results that we do for that reason, which is... when we were in the minority party, it didn't matter. Now it does. We're going to get the blame for it.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM.
I mean, there has been a lot of attention on this program. We did it, yesterday, and your colleague Senator King was on last week, and talking about the uptick in crime. We do have what I think is a pattern of people who are not serving out their sentences, and then they're getting out. And we're talking about violent offenders. And there was a home invasion in Fayetteville. The guy should have never been out. He had been arrested several times before for a bank robbery. And so you have these, and so I said yesterday, Senator Stubblefield, I was just like, there's a lot of things that a vast majority of Arkansans agree that the government should do. And I think one of those is that we keep criminals behind bars. And the other thing are things like roads. I think everybody thinks, hey, it's government does need to pay for roads. So they don't need to raise their taxes to do it because we're already giving them money to do these things. But when the government goes and invents new responsibilities, and then obligates us to pay for those, in this case, welfare for able-to-work adults, okay, they then begin to abdicate their responsibility for the things that way more people agree on, that criminals should serve out their sentences and we should have good roads for a good economy, to get goods to market and everything. Can you comment on that, what we're doing right now?
Well, I can tell you one thing that I've always believed, and I think we need to get back to it, because if we don't, we're going to be in real trouble, and that is the fact that government does not exist to create jobs. It does not exist to create health insurance. I mean, when you go back and read the original founders, what they said is the government exists first and foremost for the purpose of protecting the inalienable rights we have. In fact, the Constitution says that to secure these rights, government are instituted among men. The government's not out there to create jobs. We can create an environment to make it more favorable, for the free market to work and for people to create jobs, but not the government. That's not the government's responsibility. They've taken on way more than they're supposed to take, than they were ever supposed to take on. That's not limited government.
Mm-hmm.
And let me give you a little example. I was looking the other day at, of course, I've been studying this higher ed, their budget, and it's amazing to me how many of these colleges across the country have set up. By the way, we're losing a lot of our First Amendment rights because some of these colleges are setting up free speech zones where they mark off an area, and if you've got anything to say that might be the least bit controversial, you have to rent that space and go in that 20 by 20 painted off area in order to say it. That's not good.
No, you're just getting us ready. They're getting us ready, getting the kids ready for when the government tries to do that on everybody,
That's exactly right. And not only that, I was looking up some of the courses that most of our higher ed, and I'm not sure about Arkansas, I haven't looked at those, but you need to look at some of the courses that these higher ed colleges are teaching and charging tuition to these kids for teaching them. Let me just list you a few of them. One of them is tree climbing, pornography, female sexuality, maple syrup, history of the pig, learning from YouTube, surfing, bowling ball technology, Star Trek management, queer music ideology, packing boxes, Beatles, and puppeteers. Those are actual courses that are being taught in our higher ed universities. Now, in Arkansas, I looked at the graduation rates at our four-year institutions, somewhere in the low 30s. That's what we're graduating. From the time these kids start as freshmen, we're graduating only about a third of the students. In a two-year institution, it's lower than that. And yet we're pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into these higher ed institutions. That needs to be looked into. It really needs to be looked into.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that the graduation rates are low. Yeah, it does make sense. I think at this point we have to assess every dollar that we're spending of other people's money. We need to make sure we're getting the most bang for the buck.
Well, we do, and only 27% of the students that graduate from college get a job that's related to the major that they took in college. So we really need, and we're behind. In fact, we're having a grand opening next week of a career center here in Paris that we started about 5 years ago. Representative Eubanks and myself were in on that to teach vocational skills. And why we've waited so long to get back, I think it should be taught in every high school in the state of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Because, manufacturing has changed. Our whole society as far as industry has changed. It's just different requirements for different skills, and we don't have.
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we have the fiscal session that's coming up in a little bit, and I'm not going to tell you when. And the reason I'm not going to tell you when is because it's part of our question in our in our Conduit for Action quiz. Joe, can you give me audio real quick so we can do this the right way? Here it is. Action game show is what we do here on Conduit News Radio, where we ask Joe the questions of the newest quiz, Knowledge is Power. The Arkansas General Assembly meets every other year for a fiscal session to pass appropriation bills. These appropriation bills grant the authority for specific agencies and departments to spend taxpayer money on specific line items. The fiscal session is the culmination and full legislative process for the budgeting and spending of taxpayer money. Fiscal session is only for appropriation bills, unlike the regular legislative session, which takes place every other year in odd-numbered years. The Arkansas Constitution, Article 5, Section 5, lays all of this stuff out, essentially. And it lays out the details of the fiscal session and what can take place during the session. This quiz will highlight what the fiscal session is, its history, and the process of spending taxpayer money in Arkansas. Again, knowledge is power. We certainly need to know this. It's the biggest reason we send the folks down there, right? So, Joe, you basically know the rules of the game. So you're good to go, right?
Yeah, I know the rules of the game.
Okay. All right, here we go. We're going to go with this question number 1. Ready for this? Under the Arkansas Constitution, how many votes does it take to appropriate, grant spending authority of taxpayer money? Is it A, majority of both the House and the Senate, B, 2/3 majority of both the House and the Senate, C, 3/4 majority of both the House and the Senate, or D, 4/5 majority?
Pretty sure it's 75%, because I remember talking about this a while back.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's 75%.
75%.
So 3/4.
3/4. Now, that is a high threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, under the question number 2. Under the Arkansas Constitution, when does the Arkansas General Assembly's fiscal session take place? Is it the second Monday in February of each even-numbered year? Is it the third Tuesday in May of each even-numbered year, the second Monday in January of each odd-numbered year, or the third Monday in August of each even-numbered year?
I'm going with the second Monday in February because it's not the second Monday in January because that's already passed. And it's not an odd number year. May seems too late and August seems too late, so I'm going with February.
All right, the second Monday in February. Okay, this is good to know. Good to know. All right, in what year was the first Arkansas General Assembly fiscal session? 1928, 1996, 2010, or 2018?
Let's go with 96.
All right, going with 1996. All right. Under the Arkansas Constitution, question 4, what type of bills are considered during a fiscal session? A, any bill or resolution. B, only appropriation bills. C, appropriation bills or resolutions. D, regular bills, resolutions, and or appropriation bills.
So, question.
Yeah.
Can resolutions just be appropriation-style resolutions?
Resolutions, they could just be meaningless. Like, for example, they are completely meaningless. But Jeremy Hutchinson, I remember we were talking about this. He passed a resolution a while back, a couple years ago, honoring the Goss family, in that United Family Health Care that's under that FBI investigation for That that's all that weird stuff with the gate, basically that they had a nonprofit and they used the nonprofit money to lobby legislators to get more grants to their nonprofit or to their business or whatever.
I got you.
Anyway, that was a resolution. It was just honoring them as being fighters. It's like you could just make it, an award ceremony. So yeah, I would say, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but what do you think?
It answers my question as to what what resolutions are in the for sessions and stuff, but oh man, I don't know if they can do resolutions at fiscal sessions.
All right, well,
I'm going with just only appropriation bills.
Really? Okay, all right.
I don't know what they can do.
I know you don't. Okay. I in this question, it would have been a guess for me as well. So, all right, question 5. May the legislature amend the rules to hear other bills other than appropriation bills during the fiscal session? A, no, only appropriation bills. B, yes, if 2/3 of both the House and Senate approve consideration of the bill. C, yes, if the governor allows it. Or D, yes, if the Speaker of the House allows it. So, we got 1 no's and 3 yeses.
See, normally I would say yes, and it would probably be if the governor allows it, so he could have more power. But
think it out now.
I don't know.
This is a hard one for you, I can tell. Question 5 is the stumped on question number 5.
Yeah, this is the stumper.
May the legislature amend the rules to hear other bills other than appropriation bills during the fiscal session. I can just hear it. See, Arkansas politicos, their heads are spinning that we're even telling you this information because they may get calls.
I'm going with yes, if the Speaker of the House allows it.
All right. Okay. All right. And let's see, question number 6. When will the fiscal session begin in 2018?
February 12th. That most likely is the second Monday.
All right, you're going with February 12th.
Which is consistent with my answer before.
Yes, it is. Number 7, can the legislature itemize specific program budgets for separate votes instead of lumping them in together into an program? Could be separated out and voted on separately from the entire Department of Human Services budget, or no?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Because that actually feels kind of like intelligent, where you can separate out certain parts.
Doesn't that sound? Yeah. So if you're funding something big, big deal that was controversial,
or it's a way to hide things too.
It's true.
Because
I like your skepticism.
Because instead of lumping them together, they could lump them together and hide something somewhere.
That's a very skeptical way of looking at government, and so I like where your head's at. Question number 8: have you subscribed to Conduit for Action's email list to get new surveys and articles automatically sent to your inbox? Last question asks, what town do you live? All right, Joe, go ahead.
100%.
100%.
We're back, baby.
Oh, come on. I'm pretty sure you got one of those wrong.
Which one did I get wrong?
I don't know. I thought you got for sure one of them wrong.
Oh, number 5's not on here.
So number 5 is omitted. I don't know why, because that's not happening on any other thing.
Number 3 is omitted. Number 5 is omitted.
So you didn't get 100% because you got number 5 wrong. Because the question was...
Score says 100%.
Whatever. No, it says... No, it's not. You got it wrong. Okay. May the legislature amend the rules to hear other bills other than appropriation bills during the fiscal session. The correct answer to that is if 2/3 of both the House and Senate approve the consideration of the bill, then yes, they can. Okay.
What did I put?
You put if the Speaker of the House allows it.
Okay.
Which, I don't know. You probably got about the same chance either way, honestly, of getting something else considered. They don't want to do anything that goes against the status quo. I mean, I'm telling you, if they decided if 2/3 of the House and Senate decided to do something the governor didn't want to do, oh my gosh, I mean, their heads would be spinning.
Did I get number 3 correct?
Number 3 was in what year was I believe so. In 96, there was a constitutional amendment. And a lot of people didn't even think it was going to pass. David Ferguson, the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research, has some really good articles out about that.
Okay, so I got an 86
over at Conduit for Action. So you got an 86.
I got an 86.
Okay,
by missing one.
Yeah,
because I don't include this one down here, number 8.
Yeah,
because that doesn't count.
All right. Well, anyway, there's a Conduit for Action quiz. Joe, getting a B, that's not a big deal.
But
what's weird is I don't know. The quiz was working. I know earlier in terms of everything was showing up. So I don't know. Maybe it's that studio computer in there. Because this is the second week in a row that's done that. I'm just saying
this computer's a nice computer.
It is. It's a beast of a computer.
It's a monster.
It's a beast of a computer. It's got one of those. The computer we use in there to stream has one of those. Like liquid radiators that actually make sure everything gets cooled. It's like a radiator that you would think would go in a car. It's actually in the computer.
And the thing is, that's not even the coolest part about this computer.
Oh, okay. Well,
in my opinion.
All right. Well, anyway, we're gonna take a break, folks. The quiz is up at conduitforaction.org. Knowledge is power. If you want to know about the fiscal session, you can share it with your friends. Try to stump them. Maybe take it beforehand, and I don't know. All right, we got to go to break. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So there's a website called independentarkansas.com. This is Steve Bronner's website, okay? And he writes, again, at the website, independentarkansas.com, about attorney David Couch. Now, David Couch, many of you may know or may not know, he was instrumental in getting medical marijuana on the ballot. Matter of fact, Steve Bronner actually starts his story by saying that David Couch, the man who legalized medical marijuana in Arkansas, I mean, so he gives him complete credit for this. Now, David Couch, I believe, isn't he also the attorney that helped write Issue 3 for now indicted Senator John Woods? The Issue 3 that deceptively increased term limits by convincing people they were voting for term limits when in fact they weren't. The same Issue 3 that created an independent citizens commission to raise legislators' salaries, which they promptly did raise their salaries. I believe that is the same guy. Well, Steve Bronner reports that now David Couch has something else in the works. And that something else would be another constitutional amendment that would create a citizen panel, and the citizen commissioner panel. Now, I'm sure what's interesting here is I'm sure that the citizen panel is still going to be appointed by legislators. Yeah. Just like the citizen panel was, it's like, the other citizens panel, on raising salaries are appointed by politicians. So it's like, I'm going to appoint somebody that's going to raise my salary. You know what I mean? It's weird. We use the idea, the concept of it. It's an independent citizens commission. But don't we think that these citizens are going to be movers and shakers? Don't we think that, there are plenty of citizens who are part of the status quo and support it because they benefit from it. Okay, but anyway, it's about redistricting. Let me get to the actual point of the story. My apologies. I'm doing a very poor job of this. So Steve Bronner reports that David Couch wants a constitutional amendment on the ballot for us to vote on where an independent citizens commission, they would be in charge of redistricting coming up here in 2020 when we have to redraw the districts, congressional, state rep, state senate, and yeah, that's the idea. Under Couch's plan, Bronner reports 2 members of the commission would be Republicans and 2 would be Democrats. Those 4 would be selected by the majority and minority leaders in the Arkansas House and Senate. So we still have politicians. See, this is the same thing. You still have politicians that are selected. It's ridiculous to think that the politicians wouldn't hold sway over what the people did. So in many ways, all this is doing is taking control away from the constitutional officers and things like that, and instead putting it in the hands of, the good old boy system of the majority and minority leaders or whatever, which are politicians. So we'll see if people go for something like that. I mean, if you craft the constitutional amendment or you craft the ballot proposal in a deceptive way, and you write it, you can trick people to do anything. You can trick people to vote for anything. So that is what's in the works. I don't know. What's interesting is, and I can't even believe I'm saying this because there's such little change that has taken place in the state of Arkansas since Republicans have been in control from the Democrats. I mean, there hasn't been any real reform take place. The bureaucratic system that almost put 2 Clintons in the White House is still alive and well. There's just a resistance to change the status quo. So I really can't believe I'm saying this. But with 138 years of Democrat control behind us, no one had a problem at all with the way we redistricted every 10 years. But now all of a sudden, we do have a problem with it now that Republicans are in control. Now, so in many ways, this effort to protect the status quo, because that's exactly what this is, it might be, I don't know, It might be kind of forward-thinking. The people out to protect the status quo may say, may be looking at this and say, we're not going to be able to hold the conservatives and the limited government folks at bay forever. There may be people thinking, you know what, we know that they actually outnumber us. It's just it's only a matter of time before, Asa Hutchinson can't be governor forever. He's going to be, he can only serve 2 terms if he even gets a second term. You got Jan Morgan primarying him. So maybe we need to start planning on conservatives actually taking over at some point. Now, mark my words. Let's be clear. Conservatives have not taken control of this state. That hasn't happened yet. So maybe this is a preemptive move here, like a little chess move. You know what else? For example, I'll give you another example of an attempted preemptive move. And that was when Governor Asa Hutchinson came out and wanted to take away your right to vote for Supreme Court justices by the popular vote. He wanted to give it to the Arkansas Bar Association, and he wanted the authority to appoint from there. They would pick a group of candidates, and then the governor would decide who gets to be on the Supreme Court. Can you imagine? Let's not forget, Governor Hutchinson openly, when Supreme Court Justice, the Chief Justice Dan Kemp, he was not supposed to beat Courtney Goodson. He wasn't supposed to beat her. And yet he did. And the day after Asa Hutchinson's candidate lost, he wanted Courtney Goodson in there, he comes out and says, well, I really should be the one. I should appoint. Well, it's because your candidate lost. And so they started this whole conversation, and the Bar Association voted on it, and it's basically dead now. But let's just think about this. Let's preemptively, if we're talking about a conservative, conservatives eventually are going to take over this state, right? We're not a red state, we're a purple state. Asa Hutchinson, at the very best, is a transition governor, because he doesn't want to govern conservatively. But if you're a lawyer, we all know. And I know we broadcast, we're now broadcasting our newest affiliate, The Answer, down at Little Rock, so I know we got probably a lot of attorneys listening to us. But come on, if you're an attorney, the chances that you are a liberal Democrat are very high. A lot of you attorneys vote for Democrats. That's just the way you are, I understand that. And you're looking around and you're saying, I'm an attorney, and I want to be a judge someday. And you know what? Arkansas is getting more conservative by the minute. There's no way the constituents would elect me, because they all know I'm a big liberal. And they all know I probably interpret the Constitution as a living document, not something that actually is reflecting the tendencies and the fallibility of human beings. And so I'll never get elected, but I might get appointed, because then it's a closed-off community, and I can work my way up in the Bar Association. I can, work the good old boy system, and eventually I'll get appointed by whoever the governor's going to be. That's what they're thinking. For liberal judges to have a chance in Arkansas, they have to take away the popular vote, and that's what Asa Hutchinson was arguing for a year ago. Probably not going to hear him argue that now, because, again, he has a primary opponent in Jan Morgan. So that's like a preemptive thing. Maybe the status quo, they've got to know that eventually conservatism, limited government, this program, Conduit News Radio, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, I just don't want to see you campaign on popular conservative ideas that resonate with people. I want to see them implemented, I want to see things really change. I want to drain the swamp down at the Marble Palace, And I think maybe some of these people, David Couch and others, know that eventually that's going to happen. So let's start to change the institutions to put up walls to really protect the status quo, and maybe the redistricting and giving in control, basically still giving the Democrats a say, basically still giving, really also giving establishment Republicans a say. And don't think that establishment Republican wouldn't district out a true conservative Republican. Of course they would, because it's all about protecting the status quo. Back in just a moment. Well, yeah, so let's talk about that. Unemployment in Arkansas is at record lows. And yet we have a lot of these economic development deals that have been highly publicized in the paper, where, the governor has recruited these Chinese companies. They're going to get taxpayer incentives, local and state, to move here. And my question is, where are the jobs going to come from? Because we have a skilled labor crisis. And that comes from, not teaching these skills or vocations. So how are we going to fill these jobs, Gary?
I don't know. I really don't know how we're going to fill them, because we've really waited too long as far as preparing people for these skilled jobs. And I'm talking about jobs like electricians and heat and air, plumbing, robotics, just a lot of things that kids are interested in doing that might not be interested in going to a 4-year school and getting a liberal arts degree, which will do them absolutely no good in the culture we live in today. So I don't really know how we're going to fill these jobs. Some of these companies like Greenway up in northeast Arkansas, and I've spoken to some of those executives, they're going out of state and recruiting people to come to Arkansas because Arkansas just doesn't have the skilled workforce.
Yeah, and that's a shame. I think it's just ignored.
It is ignored.
And
we talk about it, but we don't act on it.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
We talk about it. We put it off way too long. And
do you think some of the problem with the college culture, right now? I mean, I remember when I was in high school, there was this idea from a guidance counselor standpoint that you were only as successful as a guidance counselor depending on what percentage of the graduating high school class was accepted in going to college. And then it's like, okay, once you're in college, everything's fine, everything's dandy. And then you've got this concept where the colleges now, the universities, they don't really have customers. They don't really treat the students. You're paying somebody money. They have a guaranteed clientele because you've got the government guaranteeing the loans, guaranteeing the debt the student's going to have once they get out of the institution. And now if you're saying only 30% are graduating here in Arkansas, that's very troublesome.
Well, it's hard for me to relate to that because my main incentive for being successful in college was a man called H.T. Stubblefield. He was about 6'1", 240 pounds, and he told me that if I didn't make it, then what I needed to do was get a job. And so that was my incentive for trying to be successful in college. And nowadays, I don't know what these kids are thinking. We have let me tell you something, Paul. I remember back in the 60s, the Supreme Court back in the early 60s, after listening to this liberal psychologist, they came up with their ruling to remove the Ten Commandments from all the classrooms.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Last week on the program, welcome back, we had a candidate for the special election up there in Russellville area, District 16, Mr. Bob Bailey, a Republican running for the vacant seat of the late Senator Greg Stanridge, who passed away after a hard, long-fought battle with cancer. And so we got this special election coming up, and there was an article written, and we just mentioned Steve Bronner's name earlier, and I didn't. This is just a coincidence that it happened this way. He's got his website, Independent Arkansas, where he wrote about David Couch, but he also is published over at Talk Business and Politics, talkbusiness.net. And he writes an article where most special election candidates favor Arkansas works. So the interesting thing here before we get to that is that Senator Jim Henry is quoted in the article as saying that right now they are a vote or two shy of being able to pass the funding for Medicaid expansion Arkansas works. That's why that quiz over at Conduit for Action earlier in this hour mentioned that you can separate out individual parts of the budget and vote up or down on it instead of just, and of course, what will ASA do? What will Republicans do to fellow Republicans if they don't have the votes? Well, of course, they're going to claim that they want to, close down nursing homes and throw people out of nursing homes and everything else. I mean, that's what they're going to do. Folks, this is a disaster. It has been from day one. I would encourage the Arkansas General Assembly to just Can we stop the division? But can we do so based on principle and just do the right thing and kill this thing? Can we end this program? We're going to save the state money if we do. You know, Cindy Gillespie finally admitted that if we end it, the less people on the program, the more money we save now. So why not just end the whole thing and save a bunch of money and actually get to real tax reform, real tax cuts? Let's be able to fund our roads by not spending so much money on Medicaid expansion. What do you say? Come on, folks. Surely any objective measure, any objective look about what was done in 2013 has put Arkansas in a position to where we can't actually accomplish any of the massive reforms we want to do, regulatory or tax, really just tax-wise. We can't accomplish those things because we're over-leveraging ourselves. We can't fund our roads because we've over-leveraged ourselves. We can't adequately fund our prisons and keep criminals behind bars to keep the people of Arkansas safe. Your vote to expand Medicaid in this state or to continue funding, it actually puts at risk the safety of Arkansas because we can't adequately fund our prisons. We got people, they're getting out on parole when they should, they're violent offenders and they should serve their time. Can we admit that this has completely destroyed? You know why we don't have tax cuts yet? Real tax cuts? Folks, the people of Arkansas started voting for Republicans en masse in 2010, and then 2012, and then 2014, and then 2016. And you're going to tell me we won't have real tax reform until 2019? If you believe Governor, which I don't believe him, they're going to try to protect the revenue flow to the government. They're not going to shrink spending. They're not going to shrink government to give you back more of it. They're not going to cut anything. They're actually probably going to find a way to give the government more money, but then tell you your taxes went down because they cut your income tax. What about eliminating the income tax altogether? Ever think about that? But see, that'd be too big for these people. Their heads would explode. The lobbyists, the special interests, everybody would be running around like chickens with their heads cut off because it'd be actually bold ideas. It'd be bold leadership instead of this cutting around the edges. So here's the thing. We should just defund this thing. You should just absolutely defund it. And finally just say, you know what? We're tired of this little experiment. We're tired of the divisions that it's caused. And it's time to move on. Because it'd be best for the people of this state. It'd be best for the campaign promises that we make. It'd be best for the Republican Party. You want the Arkansas Republican Party to keep going down this road, that's fine. But it's not gonna end well, okay? There's no scenario. Like I said, I think they know that one way or the other, the people of Arkansas are going to get the government that they keep voting for eventually. And maybe you guys don't understand anything but losing power. Maybe that's what it's going to take. Maybe you're just going to have to start losing elections. But one way or the other, I mean, just look at the political landscape in the future. Look at it. Take a look at it. Take some educated guesses about where things are headed. You have Jan Morgan, that's an aggressive primary challenger, and you have Asa, who is reacting to her point by point of what she says he's countering because he has a record to defend now. And he's following her around to Republican committee. If she goes to a Republican committee to speak, he's right behind her, trying to undo the damage that she's caused, because when she speaks the truth about her own experience and what happened at the Marble Palace and how bad everything was, how politically calculating everything was.
It's just really sad because you never really see an incumbent this much on the back foot. And that's what Asa is. He's very much on his back foot
he really
with this election because Jan is destroying him in certain places, and his entire record is being shown for what it is It's been his entire, like, all he's done in his time as governor is being destroyed and being crumbled, and all the words he's saying, all his carefully crafted language is being exposed, and he's so on the back foot he doesn't know what to do.
Well, and they've tried to go on offense before this happened, before she announced. One of the ways, so one of the governor's nephews, Jim Hendren, and I don't like to mention this too often because it was just a lot of fun, quite honestly, to ignore. But so Conduit for Commerce came out with a scorecard, and all these people that were in lockstep with the governor's agenda got low scores because they proposed tax increases, they passed tax increases, and there's a ton of bills that were scored. And so get this, it wasn't just Conduit for Commerce's scorecard. You also had the Family Council scorecard where they scored a lot of Asa lockstep, who are just worshiping the R at the end of his name. They got bad scores, and it's the Family Council. Oh, I'm always a social conservative. Well, no, you're not. Not according to your votes. These were the votes. And so what did that do? That prompted the governor's nephew, number one, Jim Hendren, to come out with a scorecard of the scorecards. Now, he only did this for one reason. Maybe two. But he did this for one reason, which was to try to keep the troops in line. Because, you see, they did what they were told. They towed the line of Asa Hutchinson in the mouthpieces. And yet they got bad scores because of it. And that made them very nervous. Do you know why? Because it reminded them, wow, I could potentially lose power. I could get voted out of office for these votes. So can you imagine how ridiculous it is? When you actually tell somebody that this has happened. So you have a senator who didn't like the scores he got, so he spends a month or two scoring the scores. It's like, well, this is ridiculous. This is like, it's so ridiculous. It's, I mean, it'd be just like trying to referee yourself. It's like, no, you're in power. You actually have power, and we have to live under the decisions you make. And here are these independent groups. American Conservative Union was one of them. Here are these independent groups that are scoring what you did, and you're saying, oh, I'm going to score them. Your scorecard is flawed. I'm my own person. Anyway, so they've made some efforts already to try to shore up the loyalty to Governor Asa Hutchinson and the absolute fealty at all costs. They got to support our guy. You got to support the party leader. You know why? Because the Central Committee demands it. The Central Committee demands we support our leader at all costs because he's the governor and has an R at the end of his name. Bow down. So, anyway, this article is very important. Jim Hendren says they may be a voter too short to reauthorize, right? And so what about Senate District 16? What about this special election? Let's just take this for example. You have three candidates. You have Bob Bailey, who we've interviewed. You have a guy by the name of Luke Heffley. These are the Republican candidates. I've reached out to Luke Heffley on Facebook, and I haven't seen any message back. I've tried to get him on the program. I had an interview scheduled with the other Republican opponent here, Breanne Davis. And she was scheduled like the couple Fridays before Christmas. And she canceled. It was a Wednesday, and I got a text from her, and she canceled and said she had something come up and that she was going to get in touch with me at the first of the year. And haven't heard anything. Election's coming up. So I had Bob Bailey on a couple times. I had him on last week, and I asked Bob. I said, Bob, there's a war going on at the Marble Palace, and it's all about who's more loyal to the governor or to your constituents. And I said, are you the establishment candidate? Because I promise you, out of these three Republicans, there's at least one of them who is an establishment guy, who's an establishment candidate, who's going to be loyal to Asa and try to protect the status quo. And Bob Bailey said, no, that's not me. Well, I have evidence to support Bob Bailey's claim on the program last week. Because they specifically asked this entire article by Steve Bronner at Talk Business and Politics. The headline is "Most Special Election Candidates Favor Arkansas Works. You know the one candidate that doesn't favor Arkansas Works? Bob Bailey. So it talks about Luke Heffley, okay? Luke Heffley, a GOP candidate and an Arkansas Tech University employee, said Arkansas Works should continue. This is Steve Bronner. As for the waiver request, he said the ceiling should remain at 138% of the federal poverty level. However, the work requirements that Arkansas has requested and the qualifications or stipulations for those who meet the waiver criteria seems fair to me, end quote. Then you have Republican Breanne Davis, who is a Russellville Republican, a senior account executive for SAS Institute, a global analytics company, said she opposes Obamacare, but would keep Arkansas Works. Now, boy, that is strikingly similar to other candidates that have supported Obamacare in the past, but say that they don't support Obamacare. I can't help but make that observation because this is not my first rodeo, folks, especially on this issue. She writes, I think it's hard to just rip something out, she said. I think you need to make sure you do it in a way that you've got solutions in place. Oh, okay. That's like the repeal and replace. Everybody was voting for repeal, and then the Republicans came back and said, no, replace. I gotcha. But here, there's only one candidate that says no, and that's Bob Bailey. Steve Bronner writes that Bob Bailey of Russellville, a retired Entergy employee and owner of Bailey Signature Firearms, said he is opposed to Arkansas Works. Quote, Arkansas Works, in its present form, is unsustainable. Therefore, I do not support it. He said, no, I would not vote for a DHS appropriation. I do not support the Medicaid waiver. So in the Senate 16, we can report it now. I still would love to have both of these candidates on, the other two, and talk more about this. But we can now report, according to Steve Bronner at Talk Business and Politics, he says that of the three in the special election in Senate District 16, of those three Republican candidates, two of them support the status quo and continuing Arkansas Works, Obamacare, Medicaid expansion, and one, Bob Bailey, says he does not. So, I don't know. You guys in Senate District 16, I appreciate all of y'all listening on KARV in that area. It's up to y'all. I mean, you be the judge. We've got a program for able-to-work adults who don't work and are on this program, and many of you out there listening right now are driving to work, and your taxpayer dollars are going to fund this monstrosity. And now you're going to get to decide in the special election what candidate you want. And anyway, hopefully we'll have Bob Bailey on again soon. Hopefully we'll have Breanne Davis and Luke Heffley on, because I'd really like to talk to them about this stuff. We got serious questions to ask about what their philosophy is. And do they know? I mean, we've talked to Bob Bailey several times. He knows what his philosophy is, but do these other two candidates really know? Like, what's their philosophy in government? What's their favorite book on economic policy? You know what I mean? Like, what are they? What makes them tick? How are they going to? What are they going to do to interpret the data, analyze results to make their votes? Or is it easier just to say, well, I'll figure out when I get there, or, I'm going to listen to the governor. I'm going to do exactly what the governor says. You see, the reason I know at least one of these candidates is completely in the tank for the governor is because that's how the governor operates. He's always going to make sure he has somebody as a placeholder to execute his agenda. And, for example, over in Independence County, his yes man is James Sturch, State Representative James Sturch, who walked out and killed special election reform. He is challenging Senator Linda Collins-Smith because Senator Linda Collins-Smith is one of the most conservative politicians we have in the entire state, and she votes against ACE's agenda. If you vote against ACE's agenda, he finds you a primary opponent. He did this last year or 2 years ago. One of the most conservative state representatives in the House of Representatives is Josh Miller. State Representative Josh Miller votes against the governor agenda. He had a primary opponent 2 years ago, and he beat him. Dan Sullivan, State Representative Dan Sullivan, one of the most conservative voting records in the entire state, and guess what? He now has a primary opponent that Governor Hutchinson supports, who is getting all of this money from the medical community, because Dan Sullivan is actually speaking up for more freedom in the healthcare industry and not the control and the guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support businesses and such. So anyway, you can see a clear pattern here. And this is why so many people are wary. If you only care about your own personal political power and ego and status and approval that you're desperately seeking, then it means something if somebody says, well, the governor will find you a primary opponent if you don't vote this way. That can shock people to their core if they're not really sure of who they are. And that's what we're facing down there. That's the kind of environment. That's the kind of environment that was down there when Governor Beebe was there, and it's still the environment now when Governor Hutchinson is there. Man, wouldn't it be amazing if you had a governor that took care of the executive responsibilities that he or she had, and then allowed the legislature to actually legislate? Said, you guys are the people's representatives. We're going to just let the process play out. Instead of trying to control everything with a task force, or instead of trying to control the legislature with your relatives and your nephews. Wouldn't it be amazing to just let the people's voice work and just let the chips fall where they may? Folks, if they did that, you understand the kind of government we would have. You wouldn't have a fear of writing a bill because the governor may have to veto it and look bad. The entire 4 years or 3 years has been orchestrated in a way so that the governor doesn't look like he's not a conservative, because he knows if the people find out he's not, which he isn't, he'll get a primary opponent. Well, guess what? He has one, Jan Morgan. We'll see what happens. I wonder where the governor's going next. I guess we just need to look up where Jan Morgan's been, and then we'll know. We got to take a break. Back in a minute. Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat-shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Not surprisingly, my phone kind of blew up here when I went to break. So where is Governor Asa Hutchinson going next? Well, on January 23rd, he will be at the Craighead County Republican Committee meeting at 6:30 at the Western Sizzlin. It is open to the public. So that would be next Tuesday. And interestingly enough, Jan Morgan spoke at the Craighead County Republican meeting right before Christmas. So, yeah, where in the world is Asa Hutchinson? Well, you just got to figure out where Jan Morgan spoke last. And he'll be right behind her, trying to clean up any of the credibility that he lost there. Folks, tomorrow, go ahead, Joe.
Okay, you made me think of something. Jan Morgan is leaving breadcrumbs of all the things Asa does. Asa's the bird that comes up behind and picks it up, so that it's not there.
It's like a scriptural thing too. You could say when you talk about the parable, the sower, and this in the seed that drops and the bird picks it right back up. Oh, that's funny, Joe. That's funny. I know you weren't going for the scriptural reference, but that's what popped into my head.
I was calling him a scavenger.
Okay, well. Anyway, that's pretty interesting. But tomorrow on the program, it is Johnny Cash Friday. It is the best day of the week. So feel free to send me your requests. You can put them on the Facebook page. You could text me 870-275-9799. Johnny Cash Friday, it is a day, for those of you that don't know, where we listen to as much Johnny Cash music as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news and events of the day. And Johnny Cash, an Arkansas legend, and on Fridays on this program, Conduit News Radio with me, we want to make him a tradition, honestly, because his music is fantastic, and I'm a huge fan. I'm an absolutely huge, huge fan. All right, so what else do we have here to end the day? Okay, I'm going to end the day the way we started the day. If you haven't seen Donald Trump's 2017 Fake News Awards, you need to go check it out. I'm sure you're going to hear about it all day, but he nailed it. He nailed it. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous when you actually go back and look at how many things the media got wrong. Whether it's Paul Krugman saying the markets will never recover from a Trump presidency, ABC News' Brian Ross lying, and then the stock market crashes 350 points. They lied about the WikiLeaks sneak peek. That was CNN. That's number 4. You've got all of these things. They deceptively edited a video when Trump was over in Japan, making him seem like he fed all of the food to the fish, and yet the Japanese guy did the exact same thing. Remember when the 3 CNN employees resigned over a retracted story on Russia ties? Remember that? I mean, you got to look at them. It's amazing how many times the media got it wrong last year. And now you have somebody with this, the pulpit, the bully pulpit like Donald Trump, bringing attention to it. Folks, you guys have a great day. I'll see you here tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. It'll be Johnny Cash Friday. We're going to get to some more news. Arkansas, be safe.